Well, in traditional, conventional psychological thinking, he always asks two hopelessly futile questions. One is, why am I afraid? Now, these blanks indicate that you are afraid. And what am I afraid of? Oh, you can go on exploring and finding answers at infinitum. Fear of self, fear of imperfection, this fear of that, you could you can find a million explanations. But we must not confuse explanations with reality or with understanding. There are millions of explanations we can give for almost anything. But if we can explain something, it doesn't mean that we really understand it. Is this true? So when you are confronted with a phenomenon, like for instance, drawing a blank, we must ask the right question in order to understand something, right?
Right. What is the meaning of what seems to be?
Right. Right. So, what is the meaning of drawing a blank? Well, it's simple. We already said it is fear. No, you could say it is fear of being investigated. We don't like to be objects of investigation. Nobody likes that. What is resistance? What is the meaning of resistance? Recently, a lady told me, Dr. Hora, I just finished 5 years of psychoanalysis, and I was resisting the doctor all the way. I'm afraid I'm going to resist you too. I said, you're perfectly welcome. You see, the psychotherapeutic situation is so set up that the therapist is sort of an investigator of what is wrong with the patient. He is digging into his personal life in order to find fault. And he's exploring the most intimate details of his past life and of his present life. This is, unless one is just an outright exhibitionist, this is very unpleasant. Imagine the original setup when the patient is flat on his back and the analyst behind him. It is almost like a form of inquisition. That is the victim, and that is the grand inquisitor who uses techniques of resistance analysis to probe into the deep secret of this object. This whole setup is based on some medieval fantasy. That here is an object, and inside of him there is evil. And this has to be brought out in order to purify him and make him better. Now this, of course, leads to all sorts of resistance phenomena. No wonder people are so terribly scared of psychotherapy of any kind. It is a form of intrusion into the privacy of the individual under the rationalization of scientific technique of helping somebody. And then projective tests are again sort of, they create a feeling in the patient of being tricked into revealing something about oneself what one otherwise wouldn't want to reveal.
That's probably why I tapped when she came to me and she asked me what I saw as that tap.
So these are methods of investigation, and the idea is that the patient has to be held against his will. This thing is based on the medical model of therapy, where a patient is an object, and the doctor has the professional privilege of violating the integrity of this object, either surgically or chemically or psychologically, in order to benefit him.
That's only half the picture, isn't it? Because some clients willingly want what you would call a violation.
Yes.
They would not call it a violation. They would call it an exploration or an insight.
Right. Right. So most clients believe that they want it. But if they really wanted it, there would be no resistance.
So in the cases where there's resistance, then this would be indicated, but there isn't always resistance.
In traditional psychotherapy, there is no such situation where there would be no resistance.
Really?
Yes, it's always resistance. It is disguised as a blank or a path, or it can be disguised by heightened cooperativeness. There's a million ways that resistance can be disguised. And then, of course, what we want is to be so cleverly trained that we can circumvent the resistance and be smarter than the patient is and penetrate the barrier of resistance and figured him out anyway.
Are you saying that you think that there is always resistance, or are you saying that this is one of those
That's the thing.
models of traditional psychotherapy? Do you think there are
Whenever there is someone who tries to trespass against you, it will always be resistance. No matter what the excuse for that trespassing is. You see? We don't like to be violated.
Would arthritis be a disease of resistance?
Well, that would be a very generalized question. Arthritis is a manifestation of a certain mode of being in the world, which is different in every individual case. It needs to be understood, and the patient needs to be helped to understand his own mode of being in the world. You see, resistance occurs when the therapist is treating either the patient or a disease. He is attacking the disease and attacking the bearer of the disease. But that is the better way. We don't have to treat the disease, and we don't have to treat the person. We can help the patient to see his mode of being in the world. And the problems which he encounters in life are manifestations of his misdirected mode of being in the world. When a patient is able to see the connection between his suffering and his erroneous mode of being in the world, then he becomes interested in changing his mode of being in the world to accord with what is more existentially valid. For instance, for those of you who were here last week, remember, I spoke of a lawyer who in the session revealed a mode of being in the world, that of a steamroller. So we weren't therapeuticizing the patient, we weren't discussing his problem, which was a marital problem. We were clarifying his mode of being in the world. Now the mode of being in the world is a manifestation of certain miseducated assumptions about life. This gentleman was educated in law school to be very articulate and know people under with words and with argument. He was very good at it. He could talk rapidly ad infinitum, so that his opponent would never get a word in edgewise. And then he was educated by his sports activity, which was hockey, which we know is a very aggressive game. Now these two influences have educated him into a certain lifestyle, a mode of being. The value system which he absorbed at law school and on the hockey field has determined his mode of being in the world, which was existentially invalid. It was valid maybe in the courtroom and the hockey field, but in marriage, you cannot do that. You cannot live this way. So when he could see that his mode of being in the world is existentially invalid and means manifesting itself as endless marital trouble, both with his wife and his children, he naturally became interested in finding a better way. So there was no resistance whatsoever. There was just a surprise that such thing is possible. There was thoughtfulness. And then there was an urgent desire to find the better way. And then we can help such patients to find a better way because we have a model of perfection in Jesus Christ. And the qualities and the values which he has taught the world are available for anyone to contemplate and to accept as the better way. And the result is healing for all concerned. Not only was the patient healed, but his family, of course, was relieved of the tremendous pressure which he brought home every day from the office. Would you please pass this around? So we don't have to treat illnesses nor persons, but modes of being in the world. This preserves the patient's integrity. He doesn't feel threatened. He is not in a position of being an object of tricky investigations and intrusions into his privacy. He is just learning to perceive reality in a more valid fashion. Therefore, these problems of resistance do not arise. Neither transference, nor counter-transference, nor resistance need be a problem. Yes.
How can you go about making the person aware that this is their noticing? How do you bring up the discussion of it?
Yes. Well, it reveals itself in the therapeutic encounter. It's, for instance, in this case, this man was coming for guidance and help, and he never let me get in a word edgewise. So I pointed this out. The session was over, and I haven't said a word, and he never asked me a question. So I thought to him, how is this that I haven't had the chance to say anything to you, and you never even asked me a question? You just kept talking and talking. And what do you think does that indicate? Right? It's very simple. It's a confrontation with his own mode of being in the world.
But you got to know that in your mode of being, you are not threatened by him anyway. That you cannot be drawn into reacting to that.
Well, of course, it is elementary that the therapist must have a valid mode of being in the world, not only in his office, but in his private life too. To be authentic. Otherwise, you are just a fake. If you are just in the office, putting on a certain air, and that is possible if you're a technician. If you view your work as a technique of psychotherapy, then you can be a phony because you are just using techniques. And what goes on in your private life, it may be entirely different, something fabulous. Fabulous comes from the word fable. You know? So much for the problem. Now let's come back to fear. I said, what happens if we always want to find out why we are afraid of and what we are afraid of. But seldom do we ask the question, what is fear? And in order to become fearless in life, we must understand what fear is. Would you like to know what fear is? Millions of people suffer from fear, and quite unnecessarily. Fear is self-concern. It is a habit of being concerned about ourselves. In meta-psychiatry, we call it self-confirmatory ideation. How am I doing? This is very good. How am I doing? We're always that's a catch it standard. But with him it's not. It's a political ploy, probably. I'm not sure. Yeah. Well, anyway. That's fine, right? Possible. But we develop a habit from childhood on of thinking about ourselves and being concerned with ourselves. How am I feeling and how am I doing? And this self-concern pervades our thinking. under all circumstances. And it is always in the back of our mind. So the process of self-confirmatory ideation goes on and on and on and becomes more and more intensive. Interestingly enough, if we are in the habit of fearfully contemplating our condition in life, this thought is present in consciousness, and whatever is present in consciousness acts as a magnet, attracting corresponding experiences to reinforce that mental preoccupation. The more we are in a habit of fearfulness, the more we shall encounter intimidation experiences in life. All sorts of little things will come our way to increase our fearful self-concern. So it can grow on us until we develop a full-blown anxiety neurosis. Now, anxiety neurosis is so widespread in our culture, there's hardly anyone who doesn't have it. We are trained from childhood on to be fearfully preoccupied with ourselves. Our parents are anxious about our performance, our behavior, our grades in school. We are forever conditioned to be fearful. Now, if we unmet fear, is the chronic form of self-confirmatory ideation. And therefore, it is a misdirected mode of being in the world. Then we can slough it off. How do we slough it off? Jesus often said to people, fear not. As if they could slough it off. He said, fear not, only believe. Is that possible? Is it possible to shake off fearfulness and be rid of it once and for all? You see, fear is the prolific source of illnesses of any kind. Emotional, mental, physical, social, economic. Behind all our problems, there lies the unfortunate inclination towards self-confirmatory fearfulness. If we could be fearless and loving, we could truly be healthy all the time. One of the most important things in everyone's life is to become fearless and loving consciously. How is that possible? Do we have to resolve our Oedipus complex first, or our Electra complex, or our primal sin traumatization, or all the other stuff? How do we become fearless and loving? Hmm? Only believe. Only believe. What did Jesus mean by saying only believe? Believe only. Fear not. Believe only.
Sounds like trust in God for all that.
But how can you trust God if you're scared?
No.
What?
Whoa.
No. You see, fear is nothing else but misdirected interest. When we are fearful, we are interested in ourselves. When we are primarily interested in ourselves, we are fearful. When Jesus says, believe only, what did he actually say? He said, shift your interest to something higher, more valid. Turn your attention to something that is existentially more valid. Reorient yourself mentally towards God. Infinite mind, love intelligence. The source of your existence, the foundation of all life. So when we realize that what we suffer from is a misdirected interest in self instead of in God, the transcendent, then we see that it is possible for man to be healed of self-confirmatory mental preoccupations and thus become fearless and loving and harmonious and intelligent and joyful. He can attain his full and conscious spiritual consciousness. He can become conscious of himself as the spiritual being, a divine manifestation of love intelligence. And thus attain the ability to be a beneficial presence in the world, which is our definition of mental health, which is not the same as a beneficent person. Remember, we spoke about it last week. It's not the same. It's not a do-gooder. He is good, but he is not a do-gooder. He is a presence in the world. As you see, then, fearfulness is entirely unnecessary. It is inevitable, but not necessary. Is that clear? Fear is inevitable, but not necessary. Problems are inevitable, but not necessary. Any questions? What is the difference between Stoicism? That's a good question, very good question. Stoicism is a willful resistance to all emotions. It is not a freedom from fear. It is a strenuous resistance against it. Yes? Similarly, there is a difference between courage and fearlessness. Courage is more what the Stoics were aiming for. Fearlessness is based on a deeper realization of reality. It doesn't take personal effort to be fearless. It takes a great effort to be courageous. And so to be a Stoic is a very strenuous mode of being in the world, which leads to willfulness. Because you have to will yourself to be strong, and you have to will yourself to suppress your fear. And we know that willfulness itself is the self-confirmatory idea. And underneath all pathology is self-confirmatory ideation in its many forms. And of course, willfulness is one of its very frequent forms. And Jesus advocated meekness as the basis of successful life. What does he say about meekness? You all know it. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. One characteristic of the willful man is that he always thinks about what should be and what shouldn't be. Did you notice that? Willful people usually formulate sentences. This should be, this shouldn't be, this should, you should, I shouldn't. Which then was. So, in metapsychiatry, we have an expression which is analogous to weakness, and we call it shouldlessness. And we have paraphrased that beatitude by saying, blessed are the shoodless, for their life shall be spotless. Yeah.